Right, last night, Chelsea took a humbling defeat 4-1 at the hands to Liverpool at Anfield. And that defeat has made me want to ask the question, are Chelsea better this second right now than we were on match day number 1? Where, of course, we did play Liverpool at Stamford Bridge that time. That one ended in a 1-1 draw. And if you are here to make light of last night or to try and wind me up in the comments section, this, my friends, is what I have to say to you. Here to help me discuss last night's game and whether or not Chelsea are improving is my good friend and channel fan favourite, Josh Aveste. Josh, how's things, mate? How's it going?
I mean, can we have a cuddle? Because I feel like I need. Come over here. Oh, I need it.
Bring it in, mate. Bring it in.
Thank you so much. I feel a lot better after that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I just needed that, mate, because I have to say,
He's hoping we lose every week now. He knows there's cuddles in it for him.
It does smell good as well. I have to say...
Natural scent.
Yeah, whatever you say. It's definitely off the back of a van.
Yeah.
I have to say, like, Chelsea have been so up and down for so long now. I feel like I've almost got PTSD, mate. It's been a tough 2 years. And the question that we're going to discuss and what we're going to pose is, are we better than we were at the start of the season? And I am in two minds. I don't know what to say, mate. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm Poch in or Poch out anymore. I don't know if I'm in particular player in, particular player out. Like, speaking out loud, mate, I'm so conflicted with the team at the moment. I don't know who's causing the problems. I don't know if it's the manager. I don't know if it's the individual players. I'm definitely blaming the board. I'm definitely blaming the recruitment team. But I feel like it's a mixture of all of them, mate. And yeah, I needed that hug because I'm feeling it.
So let's start off by having a little look at the personnel, because we've got in front of us right now the team that started the game on the opening day at Stamford Bridge against Liverpool. And when you compare it to the team last night, obviously on the opening day, you did have Reece James in there. You had Robert Sanchez in there. We also had Kane Chukwuemeka and Nicholas Jackson in there, players that obviously didn't feature last night. So the opening thing that we can say is you only had, 6 out of the 11 on the field last night that featured in that first game. And I think that straight away there you can draw reference to our injury crisis, and you can say, well, of course, it's going to be hard for us to consistently be improving and working on things when you have got half of the first team injured. But even that being said, when you look at last night's lineup and you've got the likes of Ben Chilwell back in there, you've got a centre-back pairing of Silva and Badia Shill, obviously Disasi in there as well, Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher. I know Gallagher came through the academy, but other than that, it's a £200+ million midfield. And then you've obviously got the likes of Raheem Sterling on really, really high wages, Noni Madueke, a young kid brought in, last season, and Cole Palmer, who has been one of the standout players, not just for Chelsea, but in the Premier League this season. Surely, when we look at last night's team, we see there's enough quality there that it sort of quashes any argument that we could say, well, no, we haven't improved, but it's all down to injury.
The injuries, we can't keep blaming them, mate. We know that we've had an injury-filled season, but then also, we were talking about this on the kickoff last night. There are plenty of teams that have had injury crisis. Like, look at the state of Newcastle right now. Man United have had injuries. They've been, like, Brighton have even had injuries. There's so many, like Spurs as well. Like, so many teams have had injury crisis moments. Look at the players that Spurs have had out and look at where they are in the league. So I don't think we can totally blame injuries. Of course, you're doing a disservice if you don't mention the fact that we have had games where we've had 12 players out. With Jackson being at AFCON, and still having injuries. Like, absolutely, that affects the momentum and the way that Poch wants to set up his team. There's no way you can go around that.
Not just the amount of players out for individual games, but also the sustained period on the touchline for obviously Ben Chilwell. He's missed most of the season, now back from injury, and we're seeing how it goes with him. But Reece James, he's missed most of the season. Kane Chukwuemeka, who looked like he was going to be an important player for Pochettino, has missed most of the season. We look at the fact that Thiago Silva's been performing well, but other than that, we're struggling at the moment to nail down who the partner centre-back to Thiago Silva would be. And then we look at the fact that Fofana, a player that we spent a lot of money on, has been out pretty much for the whole season. Nkunku, a man who we're pretty much tasking with scoring the goals for us, and he did show a real glimpse of brilliance last night, has been out for most of the season. Romeo Lavia, the list goes on. And I could also mention the likes of a Trevor Chalobah. I could also mention other players in there like Robert Sanchez, Cucurella, who are now having sustained periods on the touchline. But the reason I named the names that I did at the start is they're actually players that you could genuinely say, yes, they will be first-team starters for Mauricio Pochettino. So we have got half the squad out, but like you say, Newcastle have had a lot of players out, and they've still managed to show that when things are going their way, they do have a pattern of play. They have players that understand each other. And I think that the reason last night opened my eyes a little bit is we can't take away the fact that Liverpool are in a way better position right now than they were on the opening day of the season, having had half the team not really played together. But when you look at how far they've come since then and the quality that they're producing on the field right now, and you look at the fact that Chelsea, since the opening day of the season, do we really know that much more about us? No. I don't really feel we do we?
No, for me, if you're just comparing the two games, I don't think they're sort of interesting and elusive enough, because Liverpool, I feel, weren't at top form when they were coming off pre-season. There was something about them. That game, it was a very good game. But I have to say, Liverpool have looked way better in recent times. Like, look at the last sort of 10 or so games for them. I feel that they've actually improved as they've gone through the season, even with the injuries that they've had. They've had Robertson out for a consistent amount of time. They've had Trent injuries. Szoboszlai is back last night. He was out for a decent amount of time as well. So, again, this gets back to the injury point. They've had injuries as well. For me, mate, the key thing for us to look at here is, over the course of the season, have we significantly improved? And have we improved based on this time last year? I was looking at the stats. It's almost exactly the same as where we were last season. And that was bearing in mind how awful. That was probably the most traumatic and horrendous season we have had in our living memory as Chelsea fans. And to be still in that same sort of state of affairs is pretty negative. Now, we had a better start to the season last time round, and then we tailed off, didn't we? Whereas this time round, we've had a fairly average start to the season, probably a pretty poor start to the season, and then we started to feel that we were gaining some momentum. But then you look at the teams that we've played and the results we've had in those games, it's been pretty even against teams that are basically relegation fodder.
Have we beat anyone this season that you would say, yeah, we've done really well to get a win against them there?
Nothing springs to mind. You know what? It's actually the results against the big teams that are maybe even the draws. Like, the draw against Arsenal, the draw against Man City. Like, they were close games, weren't they? Can you think of one?
I think when you look at the context of the Tottenham game, I think that maybe you're going to say, yeah, well, Tottenham had 9 men. You need to be getting a win there. And that was a game that could have had a cricket scoreline, couldn't it? So that's the one thing. But I do look at the teams in and around us that we've played so far this season. Top half of the table opposition, look at the top half of the table. We lost to Man United, we lost to West Ham, we beat Brighton, and that's one that we can go on. But we did lose to Newcastle.
They're looking so average.
Beat Tottenham, lost to Villa, draws against Man City and Arsenal, and obviously a draw in the opening day against Liverpool, and now a loss to go alongside it. So all the teams that I've just named there in the top half of the table, we can only boast league wins over Brighton and Spurs. And we've played everyone now. So I would hope that at this point in the season, not even hope, because I think that's the wrong word. I genuinely believed after the opening day display against Liverpool that if we got to the halfway point and we played everyone at least once, then I'd be saying, yeah, we've beat more in that top half of the table. The 9 teams, apart from ourselves that are in that top 10, I would hope that we would have beat more than just Brighton in a match where, that could have gone either way. And maybe some people would say we weren't wholeheartedly deserving of a win in that game. And obviously Tottenham in a game that, yes, it does have context in terms of Tottenham being on really good form going into that match, but they did have key injuries to key players in that game. So I think one of the main things that I'm concerned about at the moment is we're not really seeing set patterns of play, set passages of play. Players that at one point in the season were coming under praise are now coming under criticism. And, there are both ends of it, because players that at one point in the season could have been coming under criticism are now coming under praise. But it's very hard to know what you're going to get with Chelsea at the moment. And one of the main things that we want as fans is just consistency of knowing what sort of performance we're going to see, what sort of levels of intensity in that performance from the personnel that Mauricio Pochettino picks to start the game. Yeah. And we're not seeing that at the moment, are we?
No, we're not. And do you know what's funny is I was on Twitter earlier on today. My good friend Archie was talking about different formation setups that we could do, bearing in mind that basically the tactics against the big teams aren't necessarily working. So when you go into a game at Anfield away, is there an argument to say that a 5 at the back formation might have been the most ideal setup?
There's been an argument to say a 5 at the back formation might be our most ideal setup since we won the Champions League.
Yeah.
So
you look at the personnel we have, mate, and like, yeah, fair enough. Gusto is coming back from an injury, and maybe he shouldn't have been starting the game regardless of the formation. But you look at Gusto and Chilwell, their strengths are going forward, you'd say. I mean, Gusto actually is like a great player all round. I'm very comfortable with him being right back, especially when Reece is injured. But, look at when Reece is back. You look at how Reece and Chilwell want to play. Their best football has been played in a back 5, you could argue, throughout their entire careers at Chelsea. So you then look at the sort of lack of experience and also the slowness of Thiago Silva. And you go, there has to be some value in putting 3 players there. You get the best out of Levi Colwill, who can sort of move into midfield position as a sort of, an underlapping centre-back. And then it all kind of starts to make sense. And also, I suppose the back 5 formation also negates some of the frailties that we have in our wing positions at the moment. Like, you look at the wingers, I don't think any of them are ripping up trees at the moment. Sterling has been perennially inconsistent. You look at Mudryk, who's having some stinkers recently, and that's coming from Mudryk's biggest fan, right? Noni, in certain games looks good, but again, like, isn't tearing up trees. Do you know what I mean? So, and then we're talking about Nkunku and Jackson being potential sort of winger options as well. And really, you want them in sort of what you'd class as striker positions, couldn't you? So with everything being said, and you're saying the sort of the tactical thing, this is the sort of thing that I want. I don't necessarily need Pochettino to play it, but I want him to be considering it. Do you know what I'm trying to say there, mate? And I think what you and I have struggled with when we've been watching Pochettino recently, and I think this is his biggest weakness, is that when things aren't going our way, we persist with a setup that is relatively similar. And even in game against Liverpool, we saw this. Really, Caicedo was completely isolated again. And there were so many pictures, I saw them all over Twitter, by the way, where there were literally just pictures of Caicedo by himself with no one else around him. And we've been saying this for a while. I just want a double pivot of Caicedo and Enzo and just keep them together. Like, keep them as close as you possibly can.
Can they do that, though? Is there not a risk there that we've bought 2 players that don't play well together?
I think they will. I think they can play together, because I think you've got the destroying nature of the way that Caicedo plays, and you've got the sort of the passing benefit of how Enzo plays. Like, that's like saying, and I know this is a bit reductive because you could argue they're better players, but putting Kante and Matic together, like that's feels very similar to me. Like, Enzo, if you think about it, quality wise, is better than Matic. I don't think many people would argue that. Like, I could understand a perspective of Matic has won more, he's done it in bigger games, he's got more experience. But Enzo's got to progress through his career. Like, it's very early to say that. And then Caicedo isn't as good as N'Golo Kante anywhere near, isn't probably half the player. But again, he's sort of got to grow into that role. So to say that they can't play together, I find is a bit silly. Because if you look at that, like some of our best times as Chelsea fans, it was with those two as a sort of a holding midfield player.
It's weird because one of the things that I could do to potentially ease the worries of Chelsea fans is I could say, look, when you see a midfield that has Romeo Lavia in there, yeah, I get Chelsea has spent a lot of money in the past, we'll probably spend a lot of money in the future, but we did not bring in Romeo Lavia for him to not be a pivotal part of that midfield. So when you see a midfield in there with Romeo Lavia in there, we're going to be looking a lot more comfortable, hopefully. When you see a strike force in there with Christopher Nkunku not having his minutes managed and not, having to play with an injury in the back of his mind, and when you see him fully fit, able to run at defenders, again, it might ease some of our worries. Maybe Fofana will come back and be the centre-back that we can pair up with either Thiago Silva or Levi Colwill next season, and it'll ease some worries. And Petrovic carries on putting in class performances. I can say all of that, but that's a big maybe, because then we're relying on a host of different individuals to be able to come in and almost buck the trend when it comes to this team in terms of going, right, it might be chaos right now and not going all that well and all that consistent right now, but I'm going to be a man that puts a halt to that. Also, we're then banking on the fact of our injury crisis to ease up, whereas if we're looking at recent history over the last 2-3 years, there's nothing to suggest that that's going to happen. We have been plagued by injuries for a long time now. So do you think that's too easy and too simple for me to just say, yeah, but when everyone's back from injury, we're going to be all right?
I think we're going to be a better team if we have a consistent run of limited injuries, and when they are injuries, which will inevitably happen in whatever type of football you're playing, that they're less than, let's say, 6 months, or that some of these injuries that we've had for a consistent amount of time, like losing our best player in Christopher Nkunku for basically over half the season, has been an absolute travesty for Chelsea. You know, they've bought him as an experienced player who basically was going to lead the line with another striker, you know, and would have basically been transformative for Chelsea. I don't think you can argue that he wouldn't be, especially after the way he came on against Liverpool, turns 4 players, smacks it bottom corner. I just don't think there are any other players in our squad that would do that. I have to say, right, before you come in, what I would say is some of what the problems with the tactical setups are forced on Mauricio Pochettino, right? He's had injuries to the wing backs, and so he's had to play centre backs at the wing back formation, right? And he's done that sometimes out of choice, but more often than not, he's done that because he's been forced to do that. Last night, he's had to play a false 9 because the club has decided to sell Amanda Broya, and Nicholas Jackson isn't ready, and Nkunku can't play an entire game. So he has to play that formation. I think it's very clear from everyone when you look at the data that isn't working. You know, we can't score goals when we play in that way. But what I have to give some credit to the guy, and we will absolutely call him out when he needs to be called out. And I feel like we have called him out in some of the, like, how we haven't progressed and how we haven't seen players improve. But I have to say, like, some of those things are not all on Mauricio Pochettino's head. It's injuries, it's lack of availability, and it's also some of the sort of the tactical setups and the naivety of the players.
I do think that the man you just mentioned there, and you were quite bold in what you said there, yeah? Bullish, some might say, because you just said there, our best player, Christopher Nkunku. Is Christopher Nkunku our best player?
Yeah, why? Who's better than Christopher? Tell me.
Who's better than him?
Like, who can change a game in the way that Nkunku can?
Who can win us more points than Nkunku?
Yeah.
Do you want an honest answer?
Go on.
This is a sorry affair, and it shows where we are. I'll tell you what, somebody who can definitely win us more points than Nkunku can at the moment, and that is because he's going to see more of the ball. Petrovic.
Yeah.
Petrovic can, and that's saying, isn't it, really? Yeah. But I get where you're going with it, and I massively agree with you.
I think Nkunku can get more points than what Petrovic can save, bearing in mind the state of the defence.
I think Nkunku will score more goals over a 38-game season than Petrovic will.
I think that's I'm relatively confident.
But then I would say Petrovic should keep more clean sheets.
He probably will. You
don't get that sort of analysis anywhere else. You don't. You really don't. Is Nkunku the key and the answer to our problems then? Is it as simple as we get Nkunku in there? Because I'll tell you what, right? Last night, I was pretty ashamed watching us, man. I get that we're not going to be favourites to win away at Anfield against Liverpool, who are chasing the title and chasing glory in Jurgen Klopp's last season, but we were second best to everything. And the worst thing we were second best to was intensity, willingness to go and win the game. We found ourselves in a crowd of Liverpool players every time we got on the ball. We were hanging on to it for way too long. The way we were challenging in the 50-50s was pitiful, to be honest with you. And although the substitutions did sort of change the run of flow ever so slightly, the scoreline will tell you we conceded 2 in the first half and 2 in the second half, and we might have scored, but Nkunku made that out of nothing. And I think that pound for pound across the pitch, there's just not enough for us at the moment to be able to compete with teams like Liverpool when they're at the races.
Yeah, we're way off Liverpool. I think it'd be stupid to say that we're anywhere near Liverpool, and that is a testament to a Liverpool team that has had injuries and they've had their own problems, you know, and it just shows that with an elite manager with proper coaching and a guy that's given time over a long period can instill a tactical setup which predicates individuals, right? And I think, you know, you see their best player being out at AFCON and Mo Salah, and their forward line, mate, is just as explosive and exciting without him as with him, and that's sort of mental to say when you think about him being one of the best players in the Premier League right now, and probably in Premier League history, you'd say. So he's got them playing unbelievable, and I think the key thing that like, as much as we were bad, Liverpool were immense, and we have to give some credit to them. You know, when they didn't have their starting 2 wing backs, when they were playing youngsters, they were great. They were really good. But going back to your question, I do think with some of the players that we are getting back now, the 2 that stand out for me, one is obviously Christopher Nkunku, because I think even if he doesn't end up being the number 9 solution for us. He's going to create chances out of nothing, as you said, which will get us goals that we wouldn't otherwise have even sniffed at, right? And personally, I feel that he might be the solution to one of the winger problems, or potentially as a number 10. And then I think that's very exciting. The other one that I'll mention, and again, we saw him playing yesterday, he got the assist. Carney being back.
Yeah.
Carney's looking really exciting. And what I like about him is, like, basically, I see Caicedo and Enzo as sort of like sideways runners. And what I mean by that is, they're there to sort of break up play in the sort of the pivot role. Whereas what Carney will do is he'll be able to support those two boys, because they're going to need support. Like, we really should have seen a proper 3 in midfield yesterday. That's what Liverpool did, and they dominated us in the midfield area, and that's why. But with Carney being in there, he can get in and in the box, as well as sort of doing the sort of defensive side, because he's got that sort of young ability to sort of be up and down. And for me, Carney's return sees the end of the Gallagher dominance in the team sheet. And I think we almost need to sort of like move on slightly from the way that we've been playing previously at Chelsea, where we've been relying on Gallagher to be that number 10 in and around all of these players, and kind of use Carney there. So I think if you start building a front four with Jackson and Nkunku, Carney and one other, obviously Cole Palmer, that's a mate, come on, you can't deny that's a really exciting front four, and probably the most exciting front four that we've had all season, and we haven't been able to see it, have we? So that changes things for me.
I do definitely think you're right. And when you mention Carney Chukwuemeka there, my ears did perk up, because I do think that I'd have to agree with you. I do think we're going to start to see a little bit less of Conor Gallagher now, and a little bit more of Carney Chukwuemeka there in that position. When we were seeing Chukwuemeka start early on in the season, when we talk about the Liverpool game and the West Ham game, for example, we were seeing Conor Gallagher push back deeper. That was because we hadn't signed Caicedo at that time. Now we've got Caicedo there. I think there's that possibility we start to see a rotation there. Going off, or back, I should say, to the first question, and I'm going to give my answer on it shortly, but are we better than we were at the start of the season? Maybe not game for game, of course, the scoreline shows it all. But at this point in time, where we are as a squad, heading into a week's worth of fixtures, let's say, if we had 3 games in a week, are we in a better place now than we were at the start of the season?
I do think we are, but I think it's slight. I don't think you can say with any confidence, based on the data and the sort of amount of points and the goal difference and that sort of thing, I don't think you can say that we're immediately so much better. But what I would say is, because the players are coming back, and they are the level of players that are coming back, and because we're building some continuity in the team, I'm positive that the end of the season will be more positive than the start of the season. And that's why that's my sort of general thing. Now, to the dissenters that are saying we are where we are and questioning Pochettino, I also kind of get that. And I think we've got to acknowledge that there isn't as much tactical nous and exciting sort of movements that we're expecting from a manager that is seen to be an elite manager. And so you have to start questioning him. But I just think it would be so silly to sort of rip everything up again and have to go through this whole transition again. So for me, I'm one of those people where it's like, I've got a stick or twist option now. And I would rather stick and hope that we grow as a team, bearing in mind the age profile, the injuries, the fact that we probably will improve and get some experience in the summer with some elite quality players, some more players that we need. And it's hilarious that we spend that amount of money, but we still need players. So I just think there is a chance that we do end up improving. What do you think?
I think that Mauricio Pochettino would not be a very good international team manager. I'll tell you why I'm saying that, right? Tournament managers, they're the ones that can take a mess and somehow make something that resembles a good team out of that mess. They're the ones that can adapt in the moment. And I think right now, when you look at all the underlying factors and everything Pochettino's got going against him, the only profile of manager that could do a better job in that situation is a tournament manager. Yeah. So I've got no doubt that, let's say, for example, Roberto Mancini or someone could do a better job with the underlying factors that Pochettino's got going against him at the moment. Jose Mourinho, I'm very confident, would be doing a better job than Mauricio Pochettino at the moment. We would have more points on the board. We'd be turning draws into wins and, losses into draws, right? But long-term project-wise, Are we going to fare better off with Pochettino? I do think we will. For me, I'm sort of going, right, if it ticks along how it is at the moment, we draw a few, we win a few, we lose a few, but nothing is that damning and embarrassing for us, then I'm really looking at it going, do you know what? I'm going to have to be patient, but I've learned to be patient over the last couple of seasons as a Chelsea fan. And I'm really going to judge him on his second season, and I'm going to hold him to higher standards on that second season. I don't want us plodding along in sick for saying, and us going, yeah, we've improved. We need to be battling for top 4. We need to be beating top 4, top 5, top 6, 7, 8 opposition in that second season. However, if things got humiliating until then, if we went and lost that cup final 5-0 and we lose back-to-back Premier League games, then of course my tune's going to change on it. But at the moment, if I was to answer my own question, I do think we are in a better position. I think even the 0-0 draw against Villa showed me that, because that is a game that we would have lost earlier in the season. It was a game that we lost earlier in the season. Similar circumstances, So I do think we're improving. I think it's a lot slower than we'd like it to be. I do think that with the age profile of our squad, it is going to be a lot slower than we'd probably like it to be. So that's a hard one. It's one of them where we have to sit, grit our teeth, persevere with it. It's not what we want, but sometimes in life you don't get what you deserve, you get what you get. And at the moment, we're getting what we're getting, and, it ain't that great, but I do think there are cause to stick with it and to trust the process. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, literally. For me, right. I do think the key people that I blame here for the sort of the stagnation of Chelsea Football Club are the boards and the people that are making the transfers. Because what they've given Mauricio Pochettino in terms of his armoury is a bunch of young players that can have amazing games and can also have games that are subpar, like we saw against Liverpool. Even with the players that they've signed, like Raheem Sterling. Again, so inconsistent, has fits and starts, looks amazing in some games, but then has a free game run where he looks incredibly average and doesn't track back and doesn't seem to care. And so when we're looking at it holistically, and you're bearing in mind all of the factors, you're bearing in mind the injuries, the age of the squad, the overall sort of tactical system that Mauricio Pochettino has to do, bearing in mind some of the players are in and out of the team, I do think there are green shoots where we're in a better position than we were at the end of last season, when we had all of these players that didn't want to be at Chelsea Football Club, that were on huge wages. We've reduced that wage bill massively. So from a business perspective, everything is looking more positive. We're going to have to go through a lot of hardship, mate. This is the hardest thing as Chelsea fan. This is why I'm feeling so sort of torn at the moment, because I don't see it getting immediately better. And this is where we get to the crux of the matter. It's do you deal with another 18 months of pain to then we're building something? Or do you rip it all up and hope that something magically changes? And for me, I'd rather go for the sort of the slow build as opposed to, another twist where you don't know the outcome.
We have twisted a few times already, and it's not necessarily going in our favour. So I think I would agree with you. But like always, we are very interested to know what you guys think. Answer the question for me in the comment section. I'll be reading all your comments. I'll try and get back to as many of you as I possibly can. Are we better as of this moment in time than we were on match day 1? The jury's out, but I'm very interested to see what way you guys are swinging. Bit of a weird phrase there, wasn't it, to finish it off on? But we don't mind it. That's the channel. So anyway, guys, please do me a massive favour. Head over to Josh's channel. It's linked in the description to this video. Subscribe to his channel so that you can see all of the content that he's banging out. Tomorrow, the preview for Chelsea against Wolves will be dropping. Make sure you are there to see it by clicking the bell so that you get a notification every time I drop a video. Smash the like on this video this second right now, and I will see you all in the next one.